Hard Hat Hockey. The Stanley Cup is here. It has been a hell of a week. Hard-working weeks for myself, late nights. Grant Miller, Columbus, Ohio. I'm in California. The day is June 9th. We are a day removed from Game 1 of the Stanley Cup. So much to talk about. Welcome in. Episode rundown for the day. Of course, we have our history lesson. What's next for you Dallas Stars fans and you New York Rangers fans? RIP, I'm sorry for your loss. Panthers versus Oilers breakdown. NHL housekeeping as always. Hard hats of the week as always. And a exclusive interview with a hero in his own like, David Jensen, 1984 U.S. Olympic hockey player, Boston Bruins alumni, Hartford Whalers alumni for you Hartford fans, and Washington Capitals alumni. David Jensen was drafted in 1983, went on to an illustrious career. I had the pleasure here at Hard Hat Hockey to sit down with him and talk all things youth hockey, hockey career, the future of hockey. The man is a myth, a legend. Cannot wait for you all to listen to this and take away some just awesome life lessons from an awesome guy. So without further ado, Hard Hat Hockey's episode 9 is here for you, and we want to hear from you. Facebook, Twitter, hardhathockey1@gmail.com. Last week we asked you if you could spend one day with NHLers, who would you spend it with and what would you do? I went on to say Gabriel Landeskog and Eric Johnson on a fishing trip in Hawaii. Turns out John Turner of Nashville, Tennessee says he wants to go fishing as well, key on the fishing trip, with Mike Fisher, Carrie Underwood, and Roman Josi with a cooler of beer. Well, John, I can't knock that. That's a good day. I don't think anyone would turn that down, whether you're a Predators fan or not. Shout out to you. Speaking of shout outs, reach out this week as well on our Facebook page. Shout out to Matt Connolly, Mitch Zerniak of Montana, Anita Dunn in Louisville, Kentucky, Dina Dunn and Tabby Lewis in Tampa Bay, Florida. Go Bolts. Sorry, Grant. Jared Turnage and Steve Spencer, two of my good buddies. Steve hails from Minnesota. Jared currently in New Mexico. Both currently training on the F-16. Godspeed to those boys. Love them. And here we are, Grant. How we doing out in Ohio?
Ohio's doing pretty great. Nice weather so far. I did some gardening this week. Got the tomatoes planted with the girlfriend. Great time of year. A little later than we usually do, but we've been kind of rained out last few times. But it's kind of the start of summer. The Memorial Tournament is this weekend here in Dublin. It's a huge deal. It's a great time. I'm sure some of the Blue Jackets are out there knocking back a couple transfusions and having a good time. So a lot of optimism in the air. We've talked about the changes for the Blue Jackets, and I think it's, you got to be optimistic this time of year. If you're not, then, I struggle in what's going on. So I'm excited to talk a little Stanley Cup action with you today, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get to that, we could use some of that rain out here on the West Coast. I would appreciate that. Also for my tomato plants. They have seemingly exploded. We haven't seen any red yet, but we got a lot of green fruit bearing on the vines.
That's exciting. It is fun. It's one of those things where, as I've gotten older, I've turned more and more into my dad, and just been like, what? Like, I don't understand this. I don't understand what the excitement is. And now I see, you see the little buds coming, and you're just like, oh, Here we go.
It's inevitable to turn into your dad. The amount of times I just stand with my hands on my hips. My sneezes, I sneeze really loud now.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Really loud sneezes. And I'm not doing it on purpose. It's a transformation. And then my comments on the weather are just beyond cringy. We needed that.
We needed that.
We needed that.
You crushed we needed that at the office on Monday. It's every time.
Yeah. Well, we needed that rain. And I become best friends with a good thunderstorm. So. Yeah.
That's very well said.
It is what it is. It happens. It happens to the best of us. So, Grant, Stanley Cup, as you said, it happened. Game 1 has come and gone. And we have an awesome breakdown for the history of the Stanley Cup coming to you right now. This history lesson of the Stanley Cup is sponsored by the Labrador Retriever Club. The Labrador Retriever Club maintains a special fund for the emergency care of Labradors who are abandoned across the country. Reach out today at thelabradorclub.com. What better way to enjoy the Stanley Cup in all its glory than with your new best friend? Go Labradors. And fun fact, we are looking to rescue a Labrador as we speak. So
That's exciting.
Hopefully that comes to fruition in the very short future. Grant, the Stanley Cup, to maintain its modern size, rings of the Stanley Cup must be retired every 13 years. When they are retired, they are kept in the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. So, for example, the 1940-41 through the 1952-53 season, that ring was retired in the 2005-2006 season, and so on and so forth. The Cup weight.
Have you been to the Toronto Hockey Hall of Fame?
I have not.
I haven't either. We should try to make it up there.
I think Hard Hat Hockey should do an episode there.
Yeah, it is like a line of hockey podcasts trying to do live shows in the Hall of Fame. It's like, guys, back of the line. Everyone wants to do a live show here.
Look, we're Hard Hat Hockey, and a Labrador is our mascot. So,
yeah,
we probably get first dibs. Anyways, the cup weighs 37 pounds, that's
I thought it'd be heavier.
Formidable going over your head. Like, they're skating around with it. That's not
nothing.
It's not nothing.
For considering how big it is, I thought it'd be heavier. That's interesting.
Here was the big stat for me. A team can engrave up to 52 names on the cup. So you think about it, you're dressing 21 skaters a night to include 2 goalies.
Yeah. Maybe 4 or 5 scratches.
Yeah, so 4 to 5 healthy scratches in the playoffs. So who else?
I think they do like front office guys, right?
So like the team trainers getting on there?
I think so.
That's cool.
We'll have to look more into this, but yeah, all the coaches, and then I do think guys that are like, assistant to the GM, they get on there. And I think also teams like guys who maybe like, you have your like call ups too. Like guys who did like maybe 10 games and then went down to the AHL. Like they probably get their name on it too. I'm sure they're trying to get as many names on there as they can. They want to make sure people, cause that's your life's achievement. Your name's on the cup.
I think about, you remember the equipment manager who had the assist on Sidney Crosby's breakaway?
Yeah. Guy like that.
Yeah, like handed the stick as he was skating by.
That's a really hard, like all those clubhouse guys, such a hard job, but I think that'd be such a sick gig. I know it's like hard. I know the hours on that is like a grind, but just being able to like travel with the team, get the equipment out, like that seems like such a cool.
It is such a grind.
I know some guys have done that for baseball. They play like D2 baseball and then become like a clubby. And it's tough. Like it's not a normal job, but like it seems sick.
I'm going to take this time to give a shout out to Nick Meldrum. Nick is the longtime equipment manager of the University of Denver's hockey program, which now carries the most national championships in college hockey history. Go Pios. Anyways, Nick has been attached at the hip to that program and is so loyal to David Carl. David brought him on as the equipment manager of USA Hockey for the World Juniors this past go around.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and it does a phenomenal job. When I worked out there, Nick would always hook me up with, whenever the guys were like done with certain sticks, he would always, hook me up with whatever equipment.
They had some good kind of relationships with equiment out there. They're so good.
We're talking pro stock. Like these sticks are like $400 a pop. You're not walking into Hockey Monkey for your Pee Wee team. No, this is legit stuff. So I was very fortunate to know Nick on a good basis, and he always welcomed me anytime I walked down to the locker room. And great. But to your point, those guys work their ass off.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But a good organization will take care of those guys.
100%.
Good organizations like will value that type of position.
Yeah. And when David Carl gets hired at the NHL level,
he's bringing him with him.
Nicky's going with him. 100%.
Yeah. That's sick.
So Grant, since we last spoke, the Florida Panthers have defeated the Edmonton Oilers 3-0 in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup. What is it?
Wait, sorry, hold on. Okay, we're starting with the Cup. I thought we were going back to the.
No, I was just giving a score rundown.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Panthers, we know what we're doing. The Panthers beat the Oilers 3-0 in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup. To get there, the Edmonton Oilers defeated what was seemingly the Cup favorite in the Dallas Stars, and the Florida Panthers defeated the President's Trophy winner in the New York Rangers. So, for those fan bases, I'm sorry for your loss. What's next for the Dallas Stars? Well, here we go. You have $16 million in cap space. Your notable free agents. You got Chris Tanev, Niels Lundqvist on the back end, Thomas Harley, Ty Dellandrea, hard worker, Sam Steele, Matty Duchene, coming off a very valuable contract, and Craig Smith. Matt Duchene notably signed that 1 year by $3 million. This is usually the time in a guy's career where maybe you take a little pay hit. Some people, refer to the pay bump when you first become an unrestricted free agent. But Matty, coming off a $3 million contract, is probably due for a pay raise, which isn't super common for his age.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of juncture in his career, and it'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of teams right now that have some decisions to make, and Dallas feels, I don't know, it feels like we're in a, I don't want to say upheaval, but Pavelski's retired. I don't know how open the window is going to be the next couple seasons.
Joe Pavelski has announced his retirement. That was my next point. Let's give a shout out to him. The guy, for his entire career, first of all, has been Colorado Avalanche killer. I swear to God, that guy scored every single time he played against the Colorado Avalanche. Pissed me off. But no, all-timer, often referred to as Captain America, Team USA.
Well, he's one of these guys that, because of the the changes in the Olympics, we never really saw him. I mean, he was Team USA all the way, but we never saw him in those gold medal moments. That, he kind of embodies that generational miss.
2010. He was on.
Talked about. Yeah, but his prime was 2018.
True. That's
that's the thing where it's he was gonna be the next guy after maybe a Bacchus or something like that. But because of the opportunity changed from what the NHL and the Olympics were doing, he's kind of one of those guys that got screwed out of it.
When I think of the best teams to not win a Stanley Cup, I think of the San Jose Sharks through the entire 2010s.
All that.
Those San Jose Sharks teams were unstoppable, and they never won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
They were Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau. You had the early years of Logan Couture when he was first starting, even Tomas Hertl to an extent, Joe Pavelski, Brent Burns. Those teams were incredible, and they never won. They were stacked, hard to play against. Yeah, so shout out to Joe. But yeah, you're right. The Dallas Stars, you wonder if this core can get it done. They've been sitting on, well, Pavelski's gone now, as we just said, and then Sagan and Jamie Benn. But it's weird. They have such a, I guess bipolar is the word, but polar opposites in their roster of these super budding young talents, and Wyatt Johnston, Miro Heiskanen, Logan Stankoven, and then old guys. And
yeah, maybe I incorrectly just associate them with the old guys more than I should, but it's hard when you look at these guys on here. They're household names. I mean, Jamie, I can't imagine a Dallas Stars team, without, I mean, I guess Sagan and Bean are going to still be there, but Duchene's kind of settled himself into the framework of the Stars a little bit. Pavelski he's a Shark, but I associate him as a San Jose Shark, but he's been in Dallas for a long time. Yeah, I don't know. It's a team that I'm kind of fascinated by because they've been right there. They've been at the doorstep, for the past 4 years, and they can't knock the door down.
Yeah, They're super close. You wonder if they're going to be able to get it done. Jake Ottinger seems to have the hottest of hottest flashes and will likely be on that Team USA roster in the coming year. But sometimes he has his low moments as well. Jamie Benn, his $9 million plus contract will end after the 24-25 season, but so will Wyatt Johnston's entry-level contract at $900,000. And he'll be due a giant pay raise, obviously.
Yeah.
So so real quick then on the ELC. So entry-level contracts are a great way for teams to capitalize in their timelines and in their wheelhouses, essentially, because you got players of extremely high value that you've drafted and are in their entry-level deals that you don't have to pay a lot for, and they're producing like long stapled NHLers. That's what you hope to see in your production and in your.
That's why drafting is important.
Drafting is so important.
Yeah.
And if you're going to keep the playoff Stanley Cup dream alive for a long term, you have to draft well, because you can't afford to just build your team off the free agent market year after year, because ultimately it's like driving a new car off the lot. As soon as you drive it off the lot, you're depreciating value, and you can only turn that over so many times. You have to draft well. So with that, Wyatt Johnston, one more season. Logan Stankoven, he's on his entry-level contract for 2 more seasons, so be able to capitalize on that value. This offseason, they do have a first-round pick and a 5th and a 7th-round pick. So some draft capital there. I do not expect them to move that first-rounder because they don't have a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. And you're going to want to at least get some high-level
product. You got to have somebody, yeah.
You got to have somebody. You can't just empty the cupboard and expect to keep repeating. But with that, so what do they do here with free agency? They probably re-sign Matt Duchene. I could see them bringing back Chris Tanev. He did a phenomenal job for them on this playoff run. I don't think he was the problem. It was like a different team. The first 2 rounds, and I question too if they ran out of gas.
Someone was playing hurt. You never really know with these sort of things. Yeah, I feel like that's been the case the past 4 seasons, is they do kind of hit a wall. And what happens is you run into really good teams. Like Edmonton's probably just better. If you're a Stars fan, you hate to hear that, but that's probably the case. So I don't know if like Duchene makes that much of a I don't know if he's as much of a difference maker as we thought he was like 6 years ago.
Well,
if we're being honest.
Look, I'm gonna walk gently on this subject as a Colorado Avalanche homer, but you're right. And you have some history with this as well from the Columbus side.
He was great in that playoff round. Like, it wasn't like he was letting any of us down. Like, he was good, but it was also very telling that they didn't try to re-sign him because they knew that the amount he was going to be owed money wise wasn't going to make sense. So they really didn't, they didn't try to bring him back. And I think that's very telling. It's like, is he someone you're going to build your team around? No, which is fine. There's still plenty of good that can come from having him on your team. But like what his reputation was when he was in Colorado was, this is a top line center. And I think people are saying he's not a top line center isn't like great. Like, I think everyone's kind of aware of that at this point, but it's still like he's not making the difference in the playoffs like you'd hope he would, considering who he is.
You just nailed it. He's notoriously does not show up for the biggest moments. And yes, he is a extremely talented center in the NHL who has been moved from so many teams. And it started with the Colorado Avalanche. And I'm not in the locker room, but there have been a lot of rumors consistently now for multiple teams about his.
And I think there's less of that as he's gotten older, but definitely when he was in Colorado, he had the reputation of kind of a diva.
Sure.
I didn't hear much of that in Columbus. I'm not as locked in. And he wasn't here that long too. That's the other thing. I mean, it was like a stretch run and then a playoff. But I don't know. He's a guy that you relied a lot on speed when he was younger. And that tends to go as you get older. And I don't think he's at that point where it's like, hey, you got to like change your game completely, because he's not that old. But, he's 33. How many more chances is he going to have at this? I'd say he'd probably around maybe for another two, maybe 3 seasons. I don't know, man. It's interesting.
I think they resign him. I think they give him 2 years, $4 to $5 million. I think that's what's going to happen. Dallas is not going to look that different from this past season. They're going to make the playoffs next year. They're going to be right there again. But to your point, the window is probably it's probably a little shorter than some other teams. So, and that's just 100% due to the ages of Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn. And Seguin had an awesome playoff run. So
it's crazy. He can still bring it.
Yeah, that guy has swagger. So out east, we had the President's Trophy winners, New York Rangers, lost to the Florida Panthers. Frankly, man, they were just outplayed. And you could make the argument they were outplayed in the Carolina series, but they leaned on special teams and the play of Igor Shesterkin. He is clearly the answer, but they've got to find some answers elsewhere. So going into the offseason, $10.3 million in cap space. They've got a first, a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth round pick. The notable free agents, Capo Caco, they're going to move him. That guy's been a healthy scratch so often. He was their first round pick a couple of years ago, and I was
a big Capo guy. I really thought he was.
I like him a lot. I think he's one of those reclamation projects that's going to flourish elsewhere, but he's been in the doghouse with the franchise so often. So I do think that they're going to move him. I would expect them to move him maybe draft day. Sell his rights.
That'd be interesting.
So you don't lose him for nothing.
Yeah.
Often a big power move by NHL franchises. Jack Roslovic, your guy coming back from the Blue Jackets.
Columbus guy.
Alex Wenberg, also
our guy.
Former Jacket. Blake Wheeler, Ryan Lindgren, Braden Schneider, stud, and Eric Gustafsson. Braden Schneider, that kid's good. He's going to be that's one of those, if you're in a Stanley Cup window and you see a prospect like that start to flourish, you're chomping at the bit. You have a little insurance in keeping your cup window open longer, as opposed to, like we talked about, you just continue to rest on free agency. Your Stanley Cup window is going to be a little bit shorter, as opposed to those teams that can rest on their own prospects, their draft capability. So, yeah, man, the Rangers, they got outplayed 5-on-5. That is what happened here. They need to have some answers. Their big guns in Panarin and Zibanejad did not show up in the later rounds against the best teams. And
yeah, it's very similar to what we said about Dallas. Like, I think Florida's just better. And that doesn't mean the Rangers are bad. And that doesn't mean there's not viability or, value in continually being really good. They got enough room and flexibility here to probably make their roster like a little bit better. Will it be good enough to, be the best team in the East again? I don't know, but I think they're still going to be around. I mean, all their top guys are there's not a ton of huge question marks going into the offseason with these guys.
Not question marks, but can that team win a Stanley Cup?
If they get hot, I mean, if the puck bounces the right way with them, I think so. I think they're going to be in the conversation for at least another 2 years. Panarin's there for, 2 more years. Igor's there for at least 1 more. He's good. I think, as long as Igor's healthy and, their blue line's somewhat consistent, I think they're gonna be fine. Again, like there's good there's cup contenders, and then there's really good teams. I think they're right there on any given day. They're floating between either one of those, and it just kind of depends on the matchup sometimes.
All good points. I think they're going to be around. They're definitely going to challenge for the cup again next season. I don't think this roster finishes the job.
What do you change? Do you think it's like scoring? Do you think you need another guy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's what I changed. And I think you've got a potential leadership issue.
Yeah, you might.
I think that's
I mean, they have the Mark Messier leadership.
And look, I'm
guy.
talking about the Rangers right now, like they're a bad team. They're not. They're a phenomenal team. But
When you get close and don't get it done, it's frustrating though.
right,
Like those are the
right.
teams
And it's those
are the teams that get the most scrutiny.
It's so hard as a fan to hear that because you are a top 5 team in the league. You are.
Yeah. I mean, it's how we talked about the Caps for years before they actually won the Cup. It's like, oh, these guys are frauds. It's like they're not frauds. They just haven't gotten over the
right. Like they're a very, very good team, and you are a very fortunate fan base to be watching such a good team. The problem is they have a void of leadership, frankly. Your captain's taken 11 plus penalties in the series. That can't happen, right? In and out of suspensions, just getting burnt left and right. You know, like that's got to change. And I think
it's crazy that like Laviolette is their coach and that happens because I don't really associate him with a team that operates that way.
Right. I agree. I'm a big fan of Peter, and yeah, he did a phenomenal job this year. Like he was a Jack Adams Award finalist. You know, guy had a great season as a head coach. They didn't have enough to get it done. That's what happened, and they had a leadership void. That's the way I see it. They didn't score enough, and Mika Zibanejad and Artemi Panarin kind of disappeared in that series against the Panthers. So.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into the Panthers a little bit here then.
Let's do it.
Yeah, they last night took care of business at home against the Edmonton Oilers. Like Trent said, 3-0, the last goal, empty netter. Took the lead early in the first period and didn't really look back. I mean, they shut down Edmonton. Edmonton had their chances, certainly. A couple breakaways there, but Bob was in Bob mode. He was as locked in as I've ever seen him.
Everyone's seen that commercial at this point for the NHL games with the walrus in net.
Yeah. That was him.
Yeah. It's a walrus. It's a freaking walrus.
Yeah.
Everyone's seen that commercial.
And I don't want to take anything away from the rest of the team because there's been moments, and again, not to make this always about the Jackets, but there's moments where like Bob just like bailed out the Jackets, even in the playoffs or like stretch runs where it's like, oh, he had to do everything. That really wasn't the case. Like I think the Panthers team defense is really phenomenal. It's just those opportunities that the Oilers had were shut down and they didn't have a ton of opportunities. There weren't a whole lot of high average goal scoring opportunities. The ones that did, and I think it was telling that it was, guys on the breakaway were like, it wasn't McDavid and Draisaitl. Like those guys were really shut down. So this is a good Panthers team, man. Like we keep watching them and it's not sexy. There's nothing about them that's like super flashy, like say the Rangers, but they're just getting the job done.
Before I give a shout out to some head coaches, I'm going to give a shout out to myself really quick. The Panthers were my Stanley Cup pick back in October. So
yeah,
I should have put a future bet on that and I did not. And now I'm regretting it. So
it's the ones you don't take that, sit with you, right? Right. Yeah, still beat myself up. I didn't just take a second mortgage out on Scotty Scheffler.
Oh, yeah, that would have hit. Grant, coming into this series, the Edmonton Oilers led in every offensive stat in the playoffs. The Panthers led in every defensive stat in the playoffs, and we saw which one played out last night. Obviously, we'll see how the rest of the series develops. Bobrovsky, I saw stopped 4 breakaways.
Yeah.
But beyond the breakaways, like you said, the Panthers played a phenomenal game. They shut down the Oilers. And I saw a lot of frustrating tweets from Edmonton Oilers fans talking about we're the better team. We outplayed them. Yeah, maybe on the stat line. Seemingly you outshot the Panthers 18-32. However, you kind of got shut down. There's this theory of home plate. And the home plate essentially extends from the points of the crease to the offensive faceoff dots and then cuts straight across to connect. That is the home plate on the ice. Outside of the breakaways, you didn't have a lot inside the home plate.
Yeah.
Because the Panthers defense was so locked down. It reminded me of the Dallas Stars in round 2 against the Avalanche. They gave them nothing. And we've said it since round 1. That's what the Panthers lean on. Gustav Forsling, you talk about one of the best value contracts in the league at this point. That guy is amazing. And even OEL last night, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, for those wondering at home, he was mixing it. He was mixing it up.
He's finding his stride right here. I mean, he's kind of he's sees the opportunity.
Yeah, that Panthers blue line is deep. They could score. They've all had a positive plus minus since the get go.
That's hard to do.
Since Bill Paxton came out with Twister in the 90s, the Panthers have been leaning on this blue line. That's a lie. I'm giving that a shout out because I can't wait for that movie to come out next weekend. I'm going to see it in IMAX. I can't wait.
Oh, that's exciting.
Oh, it's going to be great. I love Twister. Anyways, back to the Panthers. They've got a great blue line situation here. They went 0 for 2 on the power play. The Oilers went 0 for 3 on the power play. So where the Oilers can make up ground, notably, is always special teams. Their power play is lethal execution, and the Panthers were able to shut that down 5-on-5 and on the power play. So again, speaks to where this blue line is at. That's how you win the Stanley Cup. And frankly, like the Oilers are a very good team. The Panthers defense is just better. And that's where I think the Panthers finish this off. That's how they win the Stanley Cup. How do the Oilers win the Stanley Cup, though? Let's give them some credit. They get the power play going. They lean on home ice. A huge factor in this series is going to be the distance traveled. It is the farthest distance traveled between two teams.
Yeah.
In NHL history.
Yeah.
So with that, the NHL schedule has given them an extra day. Typically we see 1 day for travel and then the game 2 days later. So I probably explained that poorly. So after game 2 in Florida, typically we would see a day of travel and then the game on the following day. On this series, though, we see 2 days of travel and the game on the third day, that extra day. But with that comes, I think, a pretty heavy home ice advantage is what I think is going to play out.
I kind of hope so. But the story of the playoffs we've talked about is teams on the road have been kind of getting the job done. And I hope that kind of changes because I just love when like that place was rocking last night. You don't really think of like Florida as like a hockey destination. And that's probably unfair to an extent, but that place was fired up. And that game, they were really feeding off of every, save Bob made. He had the crowd behind him. So I hope we get a really good show from Edmonton. And I think we will. Did you see like tickets on the secondary market were going for like $2,000?
Oh, I'm sure they are, man.
Crazy. I mean, this is, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was just a really great game. It was a shutout. I mean, let's say I was hoping that Edmonton would just get one of these power play goals in there just to kind of like flip it. But Florida kind of just took the air out of them.
Shout out to the Florida Panthers team, essentially, the home ice management team. To your point, man, they put on a show. That place was rocking. The national anthems were phenomenal. Huge respect to the Oilers fans who traveled. I saw the one guy wearing he had like a full light up glow suit on, looked like he was in a Disney parade. Shout out to that guy. The place was electric. Throwing rats on the ice. Yeah. You had McDaniels, head coach of the Miami Dolphins, beating the drum pre.
I like him. I like Mike. Yeah.
They did everything right to get home ice advantage, and it paid off. So with that, because of the extreme home ice advantage I think we're going to see, I do think that this series could go the distance. Ultimately, I do think the Panthers pull it out, but I think I don't think this is going to be a short series.
I hope not. For the sake of just viewership and watching it, I think you have a really interesting matchup here, style wise. And I just hope these big guns for Edmonton get the shot. Cause for years we've just been like, I want to see McDavid at the highest level. And we're got the chance here because he's an electric show.
It was must watch TV. Haley and I were watching the first period last night. And at one point, she looked over like, oh my God. This was so entertaining. The back and forth, the speed was electric. I want to give a quick shout out. So the Oilers have killed their last 30 power plays. Large part has to be due to the discipline and the coaching put in by head coach, bench boss, Chris Knobloch. Chris, coming from the New York Rangers minor league program, he coached the Hartford Wolfpack just last season, applied for that New York Rangers coaching vacancy at the time, was not given the job, and then brought over to the Edmonton Oilers, given his shot at the NHL level. So huge shout out to him. It brought the Oilers to the Stanley Cup round for a fan base that deserves it, frankly. And yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I want to make this point clear too. The Oilers could 100% win this thing. They're a
100%. Yeah.
Very good team.
It's hard not to overreact, like a game one, but for sure.
The Panthers have been my pick since the beginning of the season, so that's why I'm resting my laurels there. But I just want it to be known the Oilers could win this thing. So yeah, I think we're in for some very, very good hockey. So
yeah.
Are you satisfied with the cup run here?
Yeah, I think that's good. Let's clean it up a little bit.
Grant, we got to clean up this house. Get out your Swiffer, get out your duster, get out your vacuum. There's dirt everywhere. You got to clean up this house right now. With that, Utah Hockey branding, Utah Hockey Watch, Panda Watch this summer. For the 23-24 season, my good friend Grant Miller sends me a picture this week of what's going to be the Utah Hockey logo. And I love the baby blue. Carolina blue
sharp.
Is a good look. However, could it be more bland in their design?
It's what we've seen. You can look this up. Maybe we'll tweet it out. I think people have probably seen it by now, but like it's not to go from what they had in Arizona to what we're kind of seeing now. It's a bit of a downgrade. I think the color palette I like that color. I think if you do a lot, you can do a lot with it. Pair it with, some good logo style. It might work. I mean, it depends on what name they choose. Cause right now all we're seeing is like the hockey club stuff, which is a finalist for the name. But I hope they don't go that direction, but it's not the greatest first step out of the gate here.
Yeah, there were some naming updates as well. The fan survey was dished out about a month ago, and from those votes, they have finalized the names Yeti, Blizzard, Mammoth, Venom, Outlaws, and Hockey Club. Let's just be frank here. It's going to come down to Yeti and Mammoth. Venom is a terrible name. Blizzard is way too much like the Colorado Avalanche. Outlaws sounds like a minor league team, and Hockey Club sounds like you're playing soccer in the Premier League. It's going to be Yeti or Mammoth.
Well, not even, because it's not soccer over there. It's like when MLS teams try to be like, well, we'll just SC. It tries to be like refinement.
True.
It doesn't come off well.
True.
I kind of like Yeti, but man, it's tough. Yeah, Blizzard would be bad. I really hope they don't just do Hockey Club. They might though. I can see them.
Don't do Blizzard. You're not Dairy Queen, right? You're a hockey team.
Yeah, Venom sounds like
it's
like
terrible.
A handball team.
Yeah, that's a terrible name.
Yeah. Outlaws isn't terrible.
It's also a Denver-based lacrosse team, so I'd rather them not. And so is Mammoth. So
yeah, a lot of these do have like a lacrosse energy to them.
I'd rather not.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeti's interesting because I just associate that with like the cooler company now.
True. Yeah.
So it's just like, I don't know if you want to be associated, if you want your name to be associated with you and you only, you don't pick like the company name of something that you're not really affiliated with.
I think the final three will end up being Yeti, Mammoth, and Hockey Club, unfortunately. I hope they don't go that route. And then the final two, Yeti or Mammoth. So, and
Mammoth's weird. Something about Mammoth that doesn't roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to go to the Mammoth game tonight? Like, I don't know.
It's a lot in the mouth. It's a lot of
Yeah.
popcorn. Yeah, for sure. Grant, out in Nashville, UC Saros wants the bag. The Predators don't seem to have the appetite for the contract he is demanding. UC Saros is expecting an 8-year by $8 million contract, according to David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period. Essentially, UC looks at Ilya Sorokin of the New York Islanders and expects a similar deal that he received from the Islanders management. And UC thinks the Predators should pay up. And according to David Pagnotta, they don't have the appetite for it. Thoughts?
They got a ton of cap space.
Sure.
They should have about 26 million. So I think this is, his camp saying, hey, we all know the money's there. The Preds don't, I mean, Yossi makes 9 million and Forsberg makes 8.5. But I just don't associate the Preds with like a team that kind of overspends, if that makes sense. I might be completely wrong on that, but I don't feel like they get stuck in bad cap situations too often.
No, but they need
years.
They need some goals. They need some goal scorers.
Yeah.
And Barry Trotz, I don't think is going to waste time with this ask for $8 million. He clearly has shown no regard for Predators who have been there for a while. And I think Barry Trotz is ready to flip the page and win some games. And the UC Saros loyalty is probably run out. And frankly, I think they move him. I think that's another guy draft day. I look out for it. I think they move him and try to get any kind of return.
So he's got one more year, right? So it's like him trying to get the deal
done before the season starts. Yes.
That's so much for a goalie.
It's a lot, right? That's a lot. I'm just not a fan of those long-term. Vasilevsky was an exception in Tampa Bay, but there are very few guys who come along where that's worth it. And
it's hard to evaluate goalies too.
If there was another guy in the league who was worth that kind of commitment in the crease, it would be UC Saros. However, I wouldn't do it. I think the Nashville Predators have needs elsewhere that are way more demanding. And the other part of this too is they have probably the best goalie prospect in the NHL in waiting in the stable who's ready to play. There we go. So Nashville Predators have Kevin Lankinen in the Raptors essentially waiting for the starting gig, and he is one of the best goalie prospects in the league. Because of that, I don't think that UC Saros gets this 8-year by $8 million extension. I think he gets traded as close as draft day, so the Preds get the most bang for their buck and don't lose UC Saros for nothing. I think Kevin Lankinen will be Barry Trotz's goalie of the future, and I think they use that cap space to capitalize for the goal scoring that they need to shore up.
That makes sense. I think there's a lot of people kind of pushing the limit on the goalie position in Nashville that aren't asking for $8 million a year.
Right.
That's just the truth right now. So, I think it's a play by his agent and his camp to like force the issue and make the conversation about him, about your client. But you said it at the top, like there's other issues in Nashville that aren't paying the goalie. So, if you're the agent, if you're his camp, you want that to actually be the conversation because it helps your leverage.
True.
It changes the conversation. But
right. That's an agent.
If I'm the GM, if I'm Barry Trotz and I'm like looking at my priorities, spending $8 million on a goalie isn't at the top of the list.
That's an agent.
I don't know if it's even on the list.
That's an agent doing good work. He's trying to get his guy paid. Grant, let's do a blast from the past here for a second. So if you recall Mighty Ducks, D1, D2, D3, Emilio Estevez, the Mighty Duck man himself, some would argue that Ducks logo from the 90s was the best in the NHL. It seems that the Los Angeles Kings and the Anaheim Ducks are going to rework their jerseys and their logos for the 2024-2025 season and going to give a modern twist to their 90s logos. Frankly, I think it's time. The Kings jerseys are okay. The Ducks new logo I think it's been one of the worst in the league, frankly. And I think that going back to that former Ducks logo is the right move. That's what everyone knows the Ducks as. And I would love to get a jersey from that former goalie mask Ducks logo. It's badass, man.
Oh, yeah, people love it. This is a bigger trend in kind of sports branding that we're seeing is like 90s nostalgia is now like the market standard. That's driving kind of branding and how things are looked at, which is a change from, the 80s were kind of seen as like the standard in terms of what you could market towards. And we saw that even just within life, like 80s parties was like a thing, like 80s music was played as like just nostalgia fed into that. And now we're seeing that move into the 90s with things like the Mighty Ducks and the Kings. The Kings black and white, always thought was pretty sharp. You think of Gretzky going there, they needed to make a splash and they wanted their image to kind of reflect a new era of what hockey in LA was going to be. And that's kind of what they did. Some people say that was driven by how popular like the Raiders were in LA. So they kind of emulated that with black and silver and white. I think there's some truth to that, but I think this is a pretty good move for both organizations at this point.
I'd like a little more purple in the LA Kings, but that's...
Well, if you're going to the 90s, you're not going to get that because that's when they made... Gretzky got there in, 88?
True.
So they went full black and white for all those years. So that, yeah, they've pushed the purple. That's when they kind of made the shift away from the purple.
True.
Yeah.
Grant, out in Raleigh, Carolina, the Hurricanes have put Jake Gensel on the market as opposed to, and they still might re-sign him, but they have let the league know for a mid-round pick, you can obtain the rights for Jake Gensel. I don't agree with this move. I think that's a guy who flourished in his time with the Carolina Hurricanes. And it's not like they were rich on goals. They needed his goal scoring capability. I don't know how they replace him at this point. They seem to, but between the trade rumors for Marty Necas and Jake Gensel, that's like probably half of their offensive capability that potentially walks out the door. And they've always had a void of big names and all-stars. And I think they're kind of doing
this is the Canes though. It's trusting the system over the individual. So they're saying, hey, Jake is disposable because the system we do creates the goals, not the individual player. And this has been their MO for, 5 or 6 seasons.
True. And when you look at the Canes making Jake Gensel available for trade, that tells me that the number that Jake Gensel and his agent have come to the Hurricanes with is too rich, too high for them. So a team like the Chicago Blackhawks makes a lot of sense for me. They're trying to build around Connor Bedard. They've got a high value draft pick this year. Also trying to build around Connor Bedard. I think it makes sense. And I look out for the Chicago Blackhawks to reach out and try to obtain the rights to Jake Gensel because they've got the cap space for it too. So,
well, we talked about like the Canes have the cap space, but it's going to get eaten up pretty quickly. And I think this is their move here to say, we're not going to dump a ton of our cap hit into one individual person.
I just don't get it.
And it'd be a sign and trade, right? Because he's a UFA.
The Canes are a very good team. Obviously, we've touted them for almost every episode in our existence here at Hardhead Hockey.
Yeah.
But they've had a void of all-star recognition, and trading a guy like Jake Gensel seems to be the opposite of what they need to do.
I don't know if they value that though. Like they see it as they pay centers because it's so important to what they do. So like Aho's going to make, his money. And then, Savchenko's been really great for them for a lot of years, and he's good enough to warrant it. But outside of him, they're just like, whatever Gensel thinks he can provide, it seems like the brain trust in Carolina feels like they can get that from someone who's not going to cost them that much money.
Yeah, they don't value it, but frankly, they need to, because I think that's why they're losing playoff rounds in round 2. So
that's fair. You might be right.
So,
but Rob Brendan disagrees with us.
Well, new management disagrees with us. No longer Don Waddle. All right, Grant, on ESPN Plus, for a long time, Super Bowl history, you've been able to watch the Super Bowl puppy edition before the Super Bowl kicks off. That's been a long-standing tradition. The NHL joined that party this year, the inaugural kickoff, if you will, of the Stanley Cup. That's pup. The show can be viewed on ESPN Plus and features all-stars such as Alex Ovechkin, Connor McDoodle, and Sergei Bobrovsky. A lot of big names there in the puppy edition. I do love this because all those dogs are up for rescue, up for adoption. And with
that's what's important, folks.
National television recognition, I feel like a lot of them will find homes very quickly. So great move by the NHL. You too can view that today on ESPN Plus. Grant, the Four Nation. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, shout out to ESPN Plus for being creative. I've ragged on ESPN and their hockey coverage for a lot of years, but there's a lot of people putting a lot of work and effort into it. And ESPN Plus, they've kind of let them have the freedom. And this is kind of like a silly thing, but people love puppies and people love dogs, and hopefully they find some good homes.
Yeah, 100%. Grant, the Four Nations face-off schedule has been released. Next February in 2025, it's going to be seemingly a Super Smash Brothers winner take all. Canada, USA, Sweden, and Finland round robin, followed by a one game championship matchup on Thursday, February 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Mark your calendars. Long way away from now, but don't miss it. Whoever the two teams that rack up the most points of the round robin are going to play in the championship game. Short, sweet, simple. I love it. Going to be a great preview for the Winter Olympics. So looking forward to that.
It's a long ways away, but mark your calendars.
Mark your calendars. Final note here of NHL housekeeping. We've got the salary cap increase of $4.5 million. That increases the cap to $88 million total for all teams in the NHL. The first increase that we have seen since COVID. I think this gives a lot of relief for teams that need it. And I think a lot of players too, though, are going to be licking their chops and are going to look to eat up a lot of this as soon as July 1.
Yeah, this is much needed. This has been, COVID hurt a lot of industries, hockey included. And, the NHL is not bulletproof. It's also an interesting league that a lot of the kind of commercial interest and economies behind it exist in two countries, which is rare. But this is going to help out a lot. And, ideally at the end of the day, guys are going to get paid. And that's what you want, because it's, you get rewarded for your success. So this will help a lot. I think it'll increase maybe, I don't know, I would say like the game behind the game. If people have more freedom to make moves and get creative with their transactions and stuff, that makes what we like to do even more interesting to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. How does this apply to your NHL team? Two cases that scream to me or reach out to me are the Avs are highly rumored in moving Josh Manson's contract to make space for the re-signing of Jonathan Drouin. And maybe now you don't have to do that. I'd love to see Josh Manson stay in Denver. If you're a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, maybe now, just maybe, you've got that little extra space to re-sign Steven Stamkos, longtime captain, on a hometown deal. So just that tiny bit of relief could make all the difference in keeping an all-star caliber player versus not. So we'll see how it plays out, and we'll be talking about it all off season long. Grant, you satisfied with housekeeping?
I'm thrilled.
Okay. Moving on to Hard Hats of the Week. Hard Hats of the Week, as always, are sponsored by Leroy's Bar. Located in the heart of Worcester, Ohio, Leroy's establishment has provided cheap pitchers and a safe haven for blue-collar workers alike since 1969. Leroy's can be your hockey home for all the NHL playoff action. Drink responsibly and drive safe. Send it.
It's tough for me. I got one. This is combining of the worlds here. Anyone that knows me knows I'm also a really big soccer fan. I love the Columbus Crew here. The owners of the Vegas Golden Knights own essentially a soccer conglomerate. Teams in Scotland, France, England, and New Zealand. And I did not think that the Vegas Golden Knights, of all the organizations, of all the people, would come into Columbus and take the GM of my beloved Columbus Crew. Tim Bezbachenko has left the Crew to basically run soccer ops for this soccer conglomeration owned by the Vegas Golden Knights. So it's a promotion for Tim. He came in here as a GM since 2019. People follow this. The Crew were going to move to Austin and were essentially saved by the fans. You can look it up. It's a good story. Tim came in that first year under new ownership to be the GM. And in that time, the Crew won the Cup twice, competed for a Continental Championship just last week, been very successful. So hard hat to him. Sad to see him go, but it's a huge promotion for him. It's a show. It showcases just how sports has changed, where there's this really popular, powerful hockey team in Vegas, and the money that's tied into that, propels a ownership group to then buy a stake in an English club. And because they're American, they're looking for help here, and they picked a really good one in Tim. So I saw the headline on NHL.com, which I just wasn't prepared for. I was looking for hockey stuff and then, get hit with that. So that's my number 3. Number 2, number 1's Bobrovsky for how good of a game he had. And then number 2, I'll get to the fans of Florida. I love these kind of non-traditional markets that show up and just, provide a great atmosphere. I know it's easy just to say hey, it's not a hockey town. It's probably not, but it's a huge city. Miami's huge, population wise and size wise. So happy for the folks down there. They've had a great team to watch the last few years. They got a great organization from, Bill Zito to everyone behind the bench. Last night it was a lot of fun, and they were feeding off of one of my favorite jackets of all time, Bobrovsky. Happy to see him at this high stage doing so well. Little bit of a rough ending here in Columbus. I don't know how many Jackets fans are really rooting for him, but there's a lot of Columbus connections going on down in Florida to root for. So that's great to see.
All great picks, Grant. My hard hats of the week, number 3, I got Alex Ovechkin in the Stanley Cup, the first of its kind.
He looked great.
The puppy scored a lot of goals, threw the body around, blocked some shots. He was all over the place. So great debut for Alex Ovechkin. I imagine he'll get adopted here very soon. Number 2, I got Chris Knoblauch, head coach of the Edmonton Oilers, done a phenomenal job. Great story coming over from the New York Rangers minor league team, and he has clearly deserved everything that's come his way. So phenomenal job. That penalty kill is executing at a high rate, killing the last 30 power plays that they faced. So good for him. We'll see how they do in the Stanley Cup. Number 1, I've got Sergei Bobrovsky. Just great performance last night in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Panthers look poised to win the Stanley Cup. We'll see if they can finish it off, but he's certainly done his part here early on, stopping every shot, all 32 that went his way, and had a shutout in game 1 of the Stanley Cup. Panthers lead that 1-0, as we discussed. Grant, you got anything else for the fans?
No, man, it's been great. Looking forward to the rest of this series, and always a pleasure talking hockey with you. Listeners, thanks for coming along for the ride. You're going to love this interview that Trent has queued up.
Hard Hat Hockey Grant said it best. David Jensen, drafted in 1983 to the Hartford Whalers. Just a salt of the earth human being, great hockey player, great hockey coach now, lives in the Boston area still, Boston Bruins alumni, huge Bruins fan in his own right, and played for the Boston Bruins. Played for USA Hockey in the 1984 Olympic run on a line with Eddie Olczyk and Pat LaFontaine. We've got a phenomenal interview coming to you right now. All right. Well, Dave, whenever you're ready, we can just start, growing up in the Boston area, Lawrence Academy, kind of how you started playing hockey, and then we can just roll from there.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Needham, Mass, which is, a suburb of Boston, probably about 10, 15 miles away from the Garden. And it was a great community, a great town, and met one of your family friends, Matt Conley, at a very early age through youth hockey and youth sports. I think I mentioned before that, Maddie's older brother played with my older brother, and the age difference was similar to Maddie and I. Maddie's like a year and a half older, and same with Tim and my brother Dickie. And we were fortunate. It was a really, really great community. Times were different back then. There was no technology, so to speak, and cable TV. So what we did is, for recreation, we were out playing sports all day, which was awesome. And I was fortunate enough to grow up, right over a pond. It was called Max Pond, and it seemed to be frozen, 4 to 5 months out of the year. I think it was a little colder back there. Or maybe I just remember it differently. But we were on the ponds. I was the youngest in my family. My dad was the youngest of 10 children. My mom was the youngest of 5. So when you're talking about cousins and, family members and even the neighborhood, I was always the youngest, which was great for me being the baby, because I sort of got to play up and play at a different level, even in, recreational neighborhood games. The magic of growing up in Boston, I was born in 65 too, was that, at 4 years old, I was already playing all those sports, like I said, out in the neighborhood, because that's what we did back then. And Bobby O was just, really coming into his prime, and the Bruins were, and they were winning the Stanley Cup when I was, about to turn 5 in 1970. And there was so much, energy towards hockey in those areas, and rinks were sprouting up, and everybody wanted to be Bobby Orr, including myself. So it just grew the game of hockey and the love for hockey in Boston, I think, to the next level. Like I said, I was young, so I can't really speak before the, 70 mark, but it was just such a great community. The coaches were all involved. The parents were involved. We were fortunate to have that, because it led to development, not only as a hockey player or other sports, baseball, soccer, football I played, but as far as core values, principal values in life, and commitment, sacrifice, teamwork, the whole 9 yards. So I think it was a special time, and I'm fortunate to have grown up back then.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, interviewing Matt, he mentioned the Bobby Orr effect. Did you ever have the pleasure of watching him play?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was must-see TV, and I was young. Like I said, I was born in 65, but Bobby Orr was like God to me, back then, growing up and watching him through the 70s, because I loved all sports, but hockey, there was a special love for hockey and a special love for watching the Bruins, and he was just magical. His poetry, emotion on the ice, and then off the ice, the class he had and everything else just led to, him being so beloved in Boston. And really, he's the ultimate hero for me, and idol I've had, and I've actually, fortunately, with a little time with the Bruins later on, in life, and through mutual friends, I've met him several times. I've got to know him through the Bruins alumni, and he's just genuine. He's even a better person than he was a hockey player, if you can believe that. And that's why, he's so loved in Boston and always will be.
I love Boston. Definitely has its heroes.
Sure.
So with that, you've got your own storied career here. So out of the Lawrence Academy, you drafted 20th overall in the 1983 draft. Spent time with the Boston Bruins, Hartford Whalers at first, some time with the Washington Capitals. Talk to me about leaving home. Yeah, Hartford's not too far away from the Boston area, but was there a kind of a transition career-wise and playing hockey in Boston for 18 years plus, and then playing, on the road at that point?
Yeah, so it was my career, like I said, with hockey too. It started with Needham youth hockey, and we were fortunate because we had, and Matty will tell you this, we had excellent coaches and they taught the fundamentals. And I remember we used to wear stickers on. When we started, there was no mic back then, and you started in squirt. And I started a little young. I don't think I was at the age when I started, but we had stickers, headman the puck, you know what I mean? Pass the puck. And we worked on fundamentals, in our garage, and they taught us that, which was phenomenal. So Needham youth hockey experience was phenomenal. We had a coach, Matty will tell you about, named Harry Duvall, and his son was one of our best friends. We used to call him Doovie Duvall, but he was instrumental in our lives. He taught me from the time I was 9 years old to like Bantam, all the way through Bantam. Then I was fortunate enough, I was recruited by a school called Belmont Hill prior to Lawrence Academy. It's the ISL, which was next level hockey, so to speak. Even though I wanted to go to Needham High School with my buddies, it was a great opportunity. And I played at Belmont Hill for 3 years and then transferred to Lawrence Academy just because it was a different, I was looking for a different, experience, so to speak. And I'll tell you this, Belmont Hill, we had a wagon. We had 3 Olympians on that high school team of mine that played in the 84 Olympics, the Fuscos, and actually 4. Christian Ruutu, who played for the Sabres, came over from Finland and played with us for a year. So it was a great hockey, a hockey school and great academically. But I moved on to Lawrence Academy, like you said, my junior year, and I actually lived there. So that was a great experience for me to live there. So I went out there my junior year. I was 16, about to turn 17. I had a really good year there. And I was actually drafted my junior year, as you had mentioned. I think it was right around this time. It was June 8th, actually, of 83. I think that's like today, 41 years ago, right? So having said that, I was fortunate, to be drafted, but I was drafted pretty young because of my birthday. I think the cutoff date was September 1st, and I was born August 19th, or I would have been in the following draft. So that led to, it was a really unbelievable summer because on June 8th, I was drafted in the first round. And then the Olympic Sports Festival was in July. And at that point in time, that's where they selected the Olympic team. And so you went out there. It's actually started in June. It was like a 10-day, 2-week type of thing with 4 teams. And I showed really good. I think I led that sports festival in scoring. And then on July 4th, they named the Olympic team 26 players when I was one of them. And I was still a junior in high school. So I was fortunate that, they were able to, with Lawrence Academy, I was a pretty good student. So I finished all my requirements and was able to spend that whole year really traveling the Olympic team. We played something like 70 games before the Olympics, and it started in August and ended in February. So I was able to do, some work on the road, so to speak, in high school. And then I came back from the Olympics in February and actually signed a contract. I think it was in March. I almost played for the Whalers while I was still in high school. There were 2 games left, but we just pushed it off to the next year, which was probably the right thing to do. And then that following summer, Trent, I was fortunate enough to make the Canada Cup team, between my senior year and the Hartford Whalers. And I was able to play with, 10 plus Hall of Famers on the USA hockey team that we played. Canada had Gretzky, Yzerman, I think Lemieux, Messier. And think about this, Denny Savard, 1984, in his prime, was cut from that team. That's how good that was. It was like the professional Olympics that took place, and now it's called the World Cup. So, and then I went to the Hartford Whalers. So I had actually done some traveling, and I lived at Lawrence Academy. It was like almost being like a small college when I was a junior in high school. So that was a great experience for me to sort of get ready for the next step, even though I wasn't thinking that way. And I will tell you this, and every parent should remember this. Like, I never shot to be a first round. My goals weren't first round draft pick, playing the NHL, like in that order. You know what I mean? I started out where I was a squirt. I wanted to become as good as I could as a squirt. Then as a peewee, I wanted to be the best I could be to get to the next level, which was bantam. Then, high school, freshman team, to varsity, to, then I was shooting for college. And when I was shooting for a college scholarship, all this kind of happened, so to speak, being drafted, Olympic team, signing a contract. And I'll tell you this, I remember my mom wanted me to go to college because I was young. I was 18 years old, right? And one of the things that was, and I promised her I'd do this, that was in my contract was 8 years of education, college paid education, successfully completed courses that the organization would pay for, which was a sailor for my mom, you know what I mean? At that point in time, because education was everything to my family. But it was a unique experience, and sorry for rambling so long about it. It was a lot going on in that time period.
No, it's okay. This is great. You mentioned the foundations that are invaluable. I had the unique opportunity. I was able to just coach youth hockey at a low level at the University of Denver. And something that we instilled in them was this idea of, we called it second gear. And just like you said, don't get too far. Don't put the cart ahead of the horse. Just focus, be the best that you can be. And then assess, just give a little bit more. That was the idea of second gear, and just getting them to focus on the fundamentals. Okay, you think you've done your best. Now let's take it a little bit more. Take it a step further. Don't worry about being the first round draft pick. It'll all work out.
Yeah, 100%.
When looking at your career stats, it's so interesting that 1984 year, just like you said, you're on the road with Team USA that entire season. That's unheard of at this point. There's a lot to be said for that ability to be able to immerse in USA hockey as a program. And I'm sure a lot of pressure just 4 years removed from the 1980 gold medal team. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was a blessing and a curse all in the same, right? Because we reaped the benefits from the 80 team, because you got to remember the last game they played, they won the gold medal. So that next year it comes around quick, that 4 years. And we really started almost a year ahead of time, right? With the exhibition games and playing in all the, the major arenas, and, playing, whether it's Team Canada, we played every NHL team, 21 games, exhibition during September, you know what I mean? During their training camps. We played the Russians 6 times back here at, major cities. So it was all sold out, and we were treated like kings that whole year because of the 80 team. But there was that added pressure, as far as, winning the gold, because everyone sort of expected it and forgot it was kind of a miracle, you know what I mean, back in 1980. Now, having said that, I was really young. Like I said, I was 17 when I made that team. And, I was probably so young and naive that I didn't really think about it too much. I was just really, every time I hit the ice, I was just trying to, and my father used to tell this to me all the time, right? There's 2 things you can control: your effort and your attitude. Every time you step on the ice, or anytime you do anything, maximum effort with a great attitude, team attitude. So I really focused on that. Every shift, someone gave me some really good advice. When you jump over the boards, play every shift like it's the last shift you're ever going to have, and you'll have no regrets. Now, it worked out well for me until I had major, and this isn't the fault of it, because I wouldn't change a thing. But even my rookie year, I was a really fast player, and I was young, right? I was 165 pounds when I was, heading into the NHL. I think it was $155 on the Olympic team. So I gained 10 pounds over that year. But having said that, I had some major injuries, reconstructive knee surgery my first year, 2 of those, 2 shoulder reconstructions, the both years I was with Boston. And, the speed can kill in a lot of ways too, if you know what I mean, if you're not built for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said too. If at the end of the day on your shift, if you just stay on the right side of the puck, even if you don't make a glorious play to score, you've done a good job. So
100%.
Control what you can control.
Yep.
So you ultimately play on this line that was deemed the diaper line with Patty LaFontaine and Eddie Olczyk.
Yep.
Can you talk to me about the chemistry with those guys? Do you maintain those friendships today, I'm assuming? And just where did the name diaper line originate?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. I mean, there was a lot of chemistry. Pat and I played together from probably, I think the first series we had was with the Russians back in August, and we played them 6 times in Alaska before we played them another 6 times, in the December timeframe at Lake Placid area and around the U.S. But Pat and I were put together pretty early on. There was chemistry there. And we had another guy in our line, Paul Gay, who played at Providence College, who was an excellent hockey player. And I think, we were rolling, so to speak, as a line. And then Eddie was playing on a different line. And I think when we came back from Europe, we played over in Finland, Sweden and I think it was, the national teams. We had a little, and it was late August, early September, so to speak. And Eddie came back. He was put on our line sometime in September when we were playing in NHL teams. And it really clicked for him. And it was sort of that piece, that additional piece, I think that we needed. Eddie had some intangibles, that really meshed well with Patty and I, because we were more speed and finesse. And Eddie was a great puck handler. He wasn't as fast as us, but he was a great, third man high, and he could make great plays and all that stuff. So he was a tremendous hockey player. He actually became a great scorer too in the NHL. I think he had 40 goals a couple of times. But to mention the line, when that line was put together, the media started calling us the kid line because we were 18 and 17 years old, right? The three of us. So the kid line, if you know anything about hockey, and it's still to this day, even with the Bruins alumni, we do functions, and you know sports, right? You josh each other and the whole 9 yards, right? You rib each other all the time. So Chris Chelios, who was on that team and is a great friend too, and was, really a great mentor too for me, because I was young and he was, 21, 22 years old. He changed it to diaper line, right? One of the teammates, and that caught on from the kid line to the diaper line. And Patty and I still laugh about, as far as changing that, because it became a signature line, actually. And Patty even says that to the day in USA Hockey, like as far as names goes, that's probably one of the signature lines people always remember is that diaper line thing. So it's kind of cool. But I will say this too, when you're a senior in high school, it's not really what you want to, the line you'd really want to be called, like the diaper line, if you follow me there.
Absolutely. I'm sure that came with a couple jabs at the
Eagle. Yeah.
But
yeah,
Eddie's a big guy too. When you see him on TV, he looks like a bruiser.
He is.
He's also a great horse betting analyst. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and every year when he announces for the Derby on NBC, I always follow his picks. And he's done well for me.
He's passionate about that, and he was big and strong, and he was like Louis Vera, our hockey coach, used to say, the intelligence, right, that we had in that line. And Eddie was super intelligent hockey player, right, on it, and he could get to areas. If he didn't have the speed, he had the muscle, and he knew where to be. He was a very intelligent hockey player, and it really, it solidified that line that, I think we had probably. If I go back, I think through the whole season, Pat probably had 110 points. I think I had close to 90, and Eddie had probably like 45 at the time. So if you add up those points over 70, 75 games, that's pretty impressive,
Yes, sir. So you obviously, so time with the Hartford Whalers, time with the Washington Capitals. It seems like there's a clear connection, seeing as you do the Boston Bruin alumni events to this day. There's a connection being, it was your hometown with the Boston Bruins franchise. That occurred in the 1988-89 season. Can you just speak to kind of the homecoming, what it meant to return? Was TD Garden, was that the home for the Bruins at that point? And just what it meant to you, being able to essentially return home to play for the Bruins.
Yeah, no, it was very exciting to come back. And the TD Garden, I think that was established or built in 95. So somewhere around there in the 90s, but it was the old Boston Garden, which was, it was just a special place, right? The old Boston Garden. So it was super exciting. Obviously, every kid who grows up in Boston dreams about playing for the Bruins. Back then there was really no free agency or anything. You were drafted, you were owned by a team, right? Until you were traded, or you had a free agent option where, that's how I came to Boston, where it was a free agent compensation type of thing from the Capitals. But I was super excited to play there, be home with with friends and family, the whole 9 yards, and just to wear that Bruins shirt. I remember even the first game, I think we played Montreal, and it was an exhibition game too. But just to throw the Bruins jersey on was so special. I remember walking in the bathroom just to look in the mirror, right? And I'd played for the Olympic team, and it's the only time I felt that kind of pride. And listen, I love playing for for Washington Capitals and the Whalers. But when the first time you throw on a USA Hockey jersey, or you're playing for your country, I remember just looking at it. You not to be vain or anything, but to go in the mirror and see the jersey on you is phenomenal. Same with Boston. I remember doing that. It was exceptional. The unfortunate part, like I said, is I I was taking a shoulder injury over from Washington that was kind of misdiagnosed, a dislocation. So it was short lived, you know what I mean? Because I dislocated my shoulder. And the other thing too is Terry O'Reilly was the coach, and Dave Conniff was there. I'm sorry, Johnny Conniff. Dave's his son who I'm friends with. And, growing up watching Terry O'Reilly, he was an idol to me. So it was special to play for him, you know what I mean, at that point in time. And we've developed a unique relationship since then. We actually have a real estate partnership together, and we've had it for close to 20 years now. And that's a whole nother story. But Terry's one of my dearest friends, and as fierce as a competitor as he was, he's just such a gentleman off the ice and so highly intelligent that he's just a special person in my life. So those were special times, Trent, and I'll never forget it.
I can't even imagine. I know you mentioned the Bruins jersey, but what it would mean to wear that jersey for your country. You watch the movie Miracle. That's all it takes to really give me chills at this point, having seen it 200 times. So doing it in real life, I know that's got to be special.
It was, especially following that 80 team. Do you know what I mean? And being that the next game played after the gold medal I was a part of, right, against the Russians. And it was in Alaska, but still, we read it all year. It was in Anchorage, I think it was. But having said that, I'll never forget that feeling. And I'll never forget the feeling of the first Olympics in Sarajevo, going out there for the actual Olympic Games. It's just something, next to the birth of your kids, it's the feelings that are right up there is monumental in your life,
I bet you've experienced some pretty epic USA chants in your lifetime.
Oh, yeah. I could send you one, too. When we actually played, they used to call it the rematch game. We played the Russians in December of 83, because you got to remember that the Olympics are a couple months away in February of 84 on national TV at Lake Placid. And it was jammed. It was just like 80. If you saw the video of it and the chants and the introductions prior, the starting lineups, which we were part of, our line, and with Chelios as well. It was just phenomenal. And we won that game 4-3. And funny enough, our captain, Phil Vercoda, who was, like Mike Ruzioni, who's a really good friend of mine as well, scored the game-winning goal. Go figure. I wish it was the Olympics. It wasn't. That was 2 months later in Sarajevo, Yugoslavia. But it was just unbelievable. Something you'll never forget.
When we're done here, I'd love to get my hands on that video. We'll post it right away to our Facebook and our Twitter.
Yeah, you got it. I'll shoot it out to you for sure. It's on. I think it's on my hockey website. I had a marketing gentleman who used to run it. He used to post videos, and I've seen it. I post it every now and then, so I'll shoot it out to you.
Perfect. That'd be great. So Team USA, obviously, current situation, the National Hockey League hasn't participated in the Olympics. The last couple go-arounds here, effectively sending how we used to do it. A lot of college-age kids and amateurs not playing in the National Hockey League. This next go-around, Gary Bettman has agreed to allow NHLers to participate. It's kind of a loaded question here. So USA Hockey's clearly changed with the how the NHL has evolved over the last couple of decades. Game's gotten faster, more spread out, probably smaller defensemen than maybe what you were used to. Where do you see USA Hockey going? Can we win gold again? What do you appreciate about the current state of USA Hockey? What would you change?
Well, I love where USA Hockey is going. If you look at the development and what they put together, it's really a national sport now. When that wasn't the case when I was playing, it was, Mass, Minnesota, Michigan, even in New England, it hadn't really, when you go up to New Hampshire, Connecticut was just starting to develop. So I love what they've done with the program for development on a national level. And I do love the fact that, the Olympics and they have the World Cup. I think it's coming up this summer. Back when we played, the Olympics were amateur, and there were some, when you talk about amateur, the Russians were a professional team, right? So it was different back then because they didn't play in the NHL. And same with the Czech team too. They were almost as good as the Russians, right? Back in that area. But I like the fact that it's more on a level, competitive game right now as far as the Olympics. And the U.S. hockey team is right there because if you look at, and we were kind of there too, and we won in '96 that World Cup. I don't know if you're a lot younger than I am, but that '96 World Cup the USA won was epic. Some of the best hockey I've ever seen. And I think you're going to see that in the Olympics right now. Now, having said that, if the Olympics were truly amateur for each country, USA would have another, they'd be on, a level competitive playing ground. But that wouldn't be the case if it were, if other countries were allowed to use professionals. So, long story short, USA hockey is as good as any country out there. Canada, but it's pretty equal. When you look at the Russian team, and that's what I love about it. Swedes are unbelievable. So anybody could win the Olympics now with all the professionals playing, and it's just going to be epic hockey for that. If we had just the Olympics as amateur straight across the board, I think that would be spectacular hockey to watch. And then just the World Cup, which again used to be the Canada Cup. That would be the best of both worlds to me.
We're going to get a good look at a preview roster essentially next spring at this Four Nations tournament between USA, Canada, Sweden, Finland. Are there any players on your radar that you'd like to see participate? Maybe not the obvious ones. Anyone that kind of piques your interest as a dark horse candidate for the roster?
I haven't really thought about it to that level, but I like the local kids, obviously. So being from Boston, right? This kid Matt Boldy, who had a great World Championships, I think he should be on that. I'd love to see him on that team. And he's from, he grew up in the Millis area, right? Millis, Mass. And you don't know this area, but my kids grew up in Holliston, the next town over. And I just love the way the kid plays the game. I love his attitude. When he's interviewed, he's very humble. He's a throwback. So I could see him being there. I don't know that he's a dark horse because he's an excellent player, but that's the guy that I want to see on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely had quite the showing at the World Championships. I'm sure there's an affinity for Charlie McAvoy. I'd imagine you've probably met him with your connections to the Bruins. Got to think he's got a fighting chance of making that final roster.
Oh yeah, I think he honestly, I think he should be a lock. The way he plays, because you need that kind of player. He can do it all, in my opinion. His offensive numbers might not be where other guys are, but as far as what he does defensively and moving the puck, and I think his offensive numbers could be a lot better if he shot more and got more aggressive on that part. But he plays the game where he moves the puck up and he lets the scorers score, if you know what I mean on that.
Absolutely. It was really fun watching the Bruins series. I kept up with Maddie a lot. We texted a lot during that Bruins Florida Panthers series. Stanley Cup game 1 is today. Who for all the bettors out there? Who are you taking?
Well, this is the thing, and I've been asked this question before, and I'm always wrong. You know what I mean? Because anything can happen in a hockey game, right? And I'm not a betting man, but I can tell you who I'm rooting for, and I'm rooting for Connor McDavid. I think he's just spectacular. Next to he's right up there with Gretzky, Lemieux. Howe, in my opinion, and Bobby Orr. You know what I mean? He's probably the closest thing I've seen to Bobby Orr in a long time, and I love the way that kid is so humble. His teammates love him, and that's what I look for, right? Unselfish. Look at all the assists he gets. He had 60-something goals, led the league last year. Then, in a shortened season, he led the league in assists this year. His goal numbers are down, but he could score 60 goals if he wanted to. But and even the playoffs, he got 2 assists a game average. He could change that around and have, a goal a game and maybe assist a game. But he's so unselfish. And again, he's just such a humble kid that I root for a guy like that, a superstar who's been in it for a while, because he deserves to have a championship in my mind. And I don't know that team's deep enough, and they may lose, because of the salary cap, certain players. I feel like this is his time, and nothing against the Florida Panthers. They're a really good hockey team. Maybe I'm just a little bitter about them beating my Bruins too, but I'm rooting for Edmonton all the way.
Makes sense to me. Yeah, he's pretty fascinating to watch. There's no game that the Oilers are ever out of.
Right.
We spoke a little bit earlier about kind of your lessons as a youth hockey player, the lessons that your dad gave you, previous coaches gave you, working on those fundamentals. You had a time running DAJ Hockey Academy, building on, well, I'm sure those same fundamentals with USA Hockey youth development. Can you speak to the message you would have for players coming into their own, trying to find their game, just youth hockey players across the country, what they should be focusing on?
It comes back to exactly what we just said, the fundamentals, right? And that's what I used to do with DAJ hockey. I had on ice camps and clinics, and I had off ice, an off ice training center, and it was all geared towards fundamentals, stick handling, shooting, passing, those type of things, backhand, forehand. And I just implement what worked for us in our youth. And I used to do it with Glenn Featherstone, who played for the Bruins. He's a very good friend of mine. And we'd have guest appearances by, Ricky Middleton and Terry O'Reilly and guys like that, right? Who would come in and the message was always the same. It was always about the fundamentals and how we got good in hockey. And I loved the game. I had a passion. It was never work to me. I would be down in my basement, if the weather wasn't good, out in my driveway, on the ponds, working on, stick handling, proper fundamentals that the coaches showed me. Because if your fundamentals are off and you keep on reinforcing that, you're just getting really good at bad habits, if you follow me. So that needs to be broken, proper fundamentals like any sport. And you think about a guy from Boston like Tom Brady. He talked about it all the time. Superstar, the greatest ever. All he worked on was fundamentals, right? His motions and mechanics on everything he did. Because in a game, it's so fast, you can't think about it. It has to be muscle memory. So, and it should be fun for the kid. If hockey's not his thing, that's what it should be. I remember one time we had someone come into our center, and we used to have memberships, right? Where parents would pay for. And the young fella, hockey wasn't his thing. He was into, arts and music, right? And, his dad came, and I was trying to show him, how to shoot and stuff like that. And he's like, "Oh, do you mind if I just play on your laptop, on your computer here? Do you mind if I just build this with hockey pucks?" And I could tell it wasn't his passion. That's fine. Whatever your passion is, find it and go for it. And I had a conversation with his dad, and, it was sort of, it was something where I didn't feel like I was stepping on the line and say, "Hey, I don't want to take your money, for a membership. Your kid's awesome, right? But he has other interests, and I don't think hockey's one of them, on it." So and if it's not, it's not. And I'm sure you can agree with me, Trent. For me, I loved it. It was a passion. So I went to school. I was, one of the things in youth hockey too, my dad used to say, I used to be such a student of the game, going to all the hockey games that Matt's brother was playing in and my brother was playing in. I'd always try to watch the best players and see what they did on the ice, right? And learn for it. Then I'd practice the fundamentals, in my basement, in the driveway, and it was fun for me. One other quick short story too. My mom, right? I think I was like 4 years old. My uncles used to drive, her brothers used to buy me these beautiful, expensive Tonka trucks. And I'd be down the basement, right, with my friends, having them rolling. I'm shooting pucks at the Tonka trucks, right? And then my mom would say, "I think there's something wrong with this kid," because they come home from kindergarten. All I want to do is go in the garage and put cones up and, stick handling outside of them and then shoot into a cone that was open, backhand, forehand, pretend you're Bobby Orr. That's the kind of passion I had for it. And that's the thing, though. My advice for any parent is if their kid is interested in it, that's great. If they're not, then there's other sports and other interests. Find out what it is. My kids, lacrosse was their sport. My son and my daughter played softball in college. Both of them played college. That's what they love to do. And you know what it was, too? When I'd come home from work, when my dad came home, I was always shooting pucks in the driveway, whatever. I'd come home from work. My son would have his lacrosse stick, practice in the yard, his moves and stuff. My daughter would be out there, fundamentals with her swing and stuff. And I knew what it was, right? So I know that was long-winded, but I think for any kid, or any parent, any coach, practicing the fundamentals, you're just trying to excel at the level you're at. The next level will come, right? Keep working on that. Great effort, great attitude. The only thing that was unacceptable to me, which was instilled in me from my parents and coaches, right, was attitude and effort. Whenever there's a lack of attitude or your lack of effort and your attitude, you're showing, bad body language or you're not a team player, that was unacceptable to my parents, and they wouldn't tolerate it. Neither would my coaches. And it's the same thing. So again, long-winded, but practice the fundamentals, teach the fundamentals correctly as coaches. Parents, enjoy it, love your kids, encourage your kids, right? And I think everything will be all set. Everything will, work out just fine, just like you said, working with, Denver youth hockey, right?
Couldn't agree more, Dave. My parents taught me the same growing up, playing hockey, and just them teaching me was a great experience. Attitude and effort, like you said. And then on the flip side of that, coaching, there was one of the most, and I'm sure you agree, rewarding experiences was just seeing the development from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. And now, years later, I feel like an old man. I'm getting high school graduation invitations in the mail for some of these kids, and I coached them when they were squirts. Stop growing up.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's the most rewarding part of it, and probably the most important part I left out. Making a positive difference in a kid's lives that they'll never forget it, right? And it's so rewarding. It's such a great feeling for you to do that. I think I mentioned to you that we do, street hockey anti-bullying programs in the Boston area, and there's no better feeling than that when you see kids get it and you can make a positive change. That's what it's all about. And like that, like we talked about, I will never forget. I mentioned Harry Duvall, and there's so many other coaches at Belmont Hill, Lawrence Academy, the whole 9 yards. Louis Vera with the Olympic team. These people are instrumental in my life. I will never forget them for that. And I'm sure, it warmed their heart to see us excel as well, and develop, but not just as hockey players. This is the thing, as people, because hockey is all about core principles and values, right? Any sport is. Anything you do in life is all about that. We talked about that with the parents, right? And implementing those type of skills, and you're really developing young people. And that's the most rewarding part of coaching or being a part of anything that's going to help kids in the next generation.
100%. I remember this kid, just a small story that I know you'll appreciate. We had this kid, Grant. It was his first year playing. So he was a couple years behind the others who had been playing since almost birth, it felt like. But we had the hometown tournament was called the Pioneer Classic. We were in the championship game, down 4-2 with 2 minutes left. Had Grant on the ice, not taking it too seriously. Obviously, we split playing time evenly at that age group. And turns out Grant scores 2 goals in his shift at the end of the game, sends us to overtime in the championship game. We went in a shootout. I'll never forget that moment, and just continuing to work with him, build his confidence, and just having an impact in him. And I'm sure that's something that he'll never forget either. I still have parents reach out to me and talk about that moment, how impactful it was seeing his development. So really cool.
It's unbelievable, right? The feeling, and you just touched on it too. Like, you remember, and we all remember when we were kids. I can still, and I'm 58 years old, but having said that, I remember when I was a little kid, and the first time I lifted a puck or did this or that, it was such a thrill. And what you just said, watching another kid, which I've had the experience to do that and see their face is just as magical. It really is. It's unbelievable. I'll never forget it. And I've been fortunate and blessed to have that experience, thousands of times over. And I'm sure you have too. And that's what it's all about. It really is. And watching them excel and succeed and grow confidence, I just love it.
Yes, sir. Well, Dave, I left Hard Hat hockey fans with this question, and we can wrap it up here if you want. Last week we asked if you could spend one day with any NHLers, who would you invite, and what are you doing? And just for context, I said I would go on a charter fishing trip with Gabriel Landeskog and Eric Johnson, because I know they have an established friendship, and I'm a big Avs guy. So obviously you've got a personal connection with a lot of these guys. So past or present, who are you hanging out with, and what are you doing?
Past or present?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back in the day, just because those were my heroes, right? Now I'm going to bring up Bobby Orr right away, right, for that. And I was fortunate enough to play against like Gretzky and Lemieux, but I'd love to have them in that charter fishing boat too. And then unfortunately, Gordie Howe passed away. But I was fortunate enough with the Whalers. He was an ambassador there to spend time with him. I was young with him and his wife. I actually spent a few nights there when I first started out with Hartford. But he was you talk about Gordie Howe, like, what a sweet gentleman. You know what I mean? He was and he was a fierce competitor on the ice, just like Terry O'Reilly I talked about. You'd expect the opposite when you watch him play the game. But like those gentlemen right there, if we could go on a fishing boat, I would say guys like Terry O'Reilly too, but I do spend a lot of time with him, and he's a business partner, so I don't need to go there, right? But those are the guys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like a blast. Well, Dave, really appreciate the time. Clearly, storied career, storied legacy, a leader in your own right in the hockey community in the Boston area and beyond into USA hockey. Fans are going to be thrilled with the opportunity to listen to this interview, and I'm sure everyone's going to be able to take away a good life lesson from it. So With that, David Jensen, ladies and gentlemen, we really appreciate it.
Thanks, Trent. It was my pleasure. Great talking with you.